to Unit 4, the We the People competition. Congratulations on winning your district competition. We're going to ask you this morning about question 3. But first we're going to introduce ourselves, and ask you to introduce yourselves, and then I'll read the question, and after that we'll hear your opening statement and have a chance to ask you some questions before we conclude with some feedback. I'm Dan Kaufman. I'm a judge on the Colorado Court of Appeals in Denver.
David Blake, I'm Deputy Attorney General with the Attorney General's Office here in Colorado.
I'm Lori Forrest, also a judge on the Colorado Court of Appeals.
I'm Jake Fogelman. I'm a junior.
I am Jordan Schenk. I am also a junior.
I'm Paul Salome. I'm a junior.
I'm Will Coleman, and I'm also a junior.
Welcome. I'll read the question. How does the use of committees in Congress promote or undermine the principles of representation, majority rule, and limited government? Evaluate the claim that votes on the floor of the Senate or House may finally determine the success or failure of a proposal, but the important decisions that determine its ultimate fate have normally already been made in the committee that considered it. Some scholars contend that there are now too many committees and subcommittees in Congress and that they have become little legislatures. Do you agree or disagree? Why? We're now ready to hear your opening statement.
Former President Woodrow Wilson said congressional committees provide an invaluable informational services to Congress by investigating and reporting on specialized subjects. Congressional committee is a body within Congress that focuses on a specific area. Committees use this expertise to determine which bills are suitable, and since only 10% of bills make it past the committee stage, committees effectively control the legislation done in Congress.
Moreover, debating on either the House or Senate floor can be nothing more than a formality, as evidenced by Ted Cruz's 21-hour speech against the Affordable Care Act, which received considerable media attention but inspired no changes, while committees such as the Subcommittee on Labor, Health, and Human Services did the actual drafting of that legislation. Committees also oversee the executive branch. In these ways, committees are the backbones of Congress.
However, because committees control which bills are sent to the floor for consideration, they can undermine representation. According to Pew Research Center, 81% of Americans support background checks on gun sales. The proposed Fixed Gun Checks Act of 2013, which would require background checks on all gun sales by unlicensed dealers, was referred to the Republican House Judiciary Committee in January 2013, but has never reached the floor. A majority of Americans support background checks, but their views are not adequately represented in the committees.
In contrast, committees can promote representation if its members represent their constituencies' desires. Representative Mike Kaufman, serving Colorado's 6th District, is a member of the House Committee on Small Business and is pushing for the Small Business Startup Savings Accounts Act, which supports business owners of his district. In this way, committees can promote representation even though voters do not directly elect members into committees.
Committees can promote majority rule because they are composed primarily of majority party members. Because Republicans currently constitute a majority of the House of Representatives, the House's committees are all dominated with Republican majorities to facilitate Republican-favored bills. Thus, the Veterans Economic Opportunity Act of 2013 was referred to the House Veterans Affairs Committee in June, was passed out of the committee in August, and passed the House in October. In this way, the Republican majority can use its committees to push its legislation through the House quickly.
Committees can also promote limited government, namely a government with enumerated powers and explicit boundaries, through legislative oversight. Legislative oversight enables committees to investigate the executive branch and hold hearings as to whether it is acting as Congress would like. In 2004, the Senate Armed Services Committee conducted hearings on military misconduct in the Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq. As the Abu Ghraib abuses of torture were made public, Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense at the time, took responsibility and corrective measures were taken. In this way, committee oversight promotes limited government by investigating executive misconduct.
However, committees can also undermine limited government. Senator Joseph McCarthy was the chair of a Senate Committee on Government Operations during the Communist scare of the 1950s. Of the 205 State Department members he accused of being communist, he was never able to find evidence of a single one being subversive. Limited government was undermined because McCarthy abused his power of congressional oversight and violated a basic tenet of the Fifth Amendment, that no man must testify against himself.
Unfortunately, the number of committees has grown out of control. There are currently 42 committees and 169 subcommittees in Congress, which PBS political analyst John McLaughlin claims is too much, and that any given committee mirrors the others too much. This was evident in the events following the 2012 attacks on the Benghazi embassy. No fewer than 33 congressional committees held hearings, arguably providing oversight, yet no bills were passed.
Only one formal action was taken from those investigations. House Resolution 36 was introduced, intending to create a select committee to further investigate the Benghazi attacks. However, even this bill did not pass, showing how any attempt at action was stifled. Having so many committees overlapping leads to conflicting interests and can prevent any meaningful legislation from occurring. We are now ready for your questions.
Yeah, can you please describe to us how members are appointed and whether or not there's a good or bad or better way to make appointments?
So, committee chairmen are appointed by the Speaker of the House and House Representatives or the Senate Majority Leader. And from that point on, either the chairman and either of the House then pick the people in the committees from that point on.
Do you know what's used to differentiate between one member going to one committee and another to another committee?
I think their degree of expertise on a subject, because there are so many committees and they deal with such a broad spectrum of things. For example, the House Veterans Affairs Committee is likely to be filled with people who have actually served in the armed forces or the military of the United States, because they'll have a degree of expertise in that subject. And so I think that's one of the main reasons why a specific person is appointed to be in a specific committee.
Partisanship also helps in appointing members to certain committees. For example, in the House of Representatives, which is dominated by Republicans currently as a majority, they appoint to all of their committees a Republican majority. And likewise in the Senate, which is controlled by Democrats, they appoint Democratic majorities to all their committees, which helps promote majority rule in each of the chambers.
And additionally, for which people are going to be in which committees, that also has to deal with the various constituents of that representative in the House of Representatives, as pointed out by Mike Kaufman's position in the Committee on Small Businesses, reflecting constituents' values of small business.
Under what circumstances, if any, should the doors to a committee hearing be closed?
Well, if the hearing is a matter of national security and containing confidential information, this information shouldn't be released to the public necessarily. So if it's like documents or other information that should not be in public hands, then the hearing can be private and not publicly disclosed.
Also, private hearings would be able to keep out possible influences brought upon by media coverage. For example, when large filibusters are made, there's obviously a lot of media coverage, and representatives or senators use that airtime to try to work on not only just what the issue at hand, but also re-election. So they let their constituents see them saying certain things in order to get more appeal, rather than something that's going to be perhaps relevant to the bill at hand or whatever issue it happens to be.
You said in your opening statement that the congressional committees promote majority rule, but we have a system now where, as you also noted, the House is controlled by Republicans and the Senate by Democrats, resulting in congressional gridlock. Is there a way to address this issue of congressional gridlock, and in particular within the committee systems?
Joint committees can be formed, like the Joint Committee on Economics has been formed recently, and their purpose is to get members of committees from both the House and the Senate and bring them together to come to an agreement. And with the hope that once they come to an agreement, they can present it back to both the House and back to the Senate so that they both agree.
Conference committees make sure that if there's one version of a bill in the House and another version of the bill in the Senate, the conference committees reconcile the bills and to make sure that they're the exact same form and that there's complete agreement between the two chambers, which helps settle the gridlock and promote compromise.
The House Rules Committee is been referred to as a traffic cop. It's kind of a super committee. Can you describe why that committee is perhaps more powerful than others, and whether or not that dichotomy is appropriate?
The House Rules Committee is considered the traffic cop because it determines in the manner in which bills are brought to the floor of the House for discussion. So in that way, based on the political leanings of the members of the House Representatives, which currently is Republicans, that committee can determine whether or not certain issues that the Republicans don't want to be brought to the table can be brought. So, for example, when Speaker Boehner says that the Senate bill on immigration will never be, he refuses to bring that to the floor of the House, that can be part of the House Rules Committee's job, because that is what their job is.
Going off of what Jake said, the Senate is called the Chamber of Unlimited Debate because there's no limit to how many bills can be debated on the floors or such senatorial procedures such as holds and filibusters, which but in the House, only select legislation can get to the floor. So the House Rules Committee has a lot of power because not every single bill of the thousands and thousands that could possibly be proposed will make it to the floor. So the House Rules Committee is important in controlling this.
The Rules Committee also sets whether it will be an open or closed rule for a bill to be voted on. In a closed rule, there are no amendments allowed to be proposed by the floor of the House or Senate, or from the House, I mean. While in an open rule, amendments are allowed and are recommended. So with a closed rule, it allows the House to push through its bill quickly without the proposition of the minority party proposing amendments or trying to get the bill changed.
You mentioned the large number of bills that die in committee. Do you think it would be a good idea or ill-advised to have, if not 100%, some set percentage of bills?
It happens to Judge Flores all the time. Thank you. Let's, before I ask you to show your appreciation for the team, I forgot to ask you to introduce your teacher. If one of you could do that.
Mr. Jeff Ryman is our coach.
And also our coach, Mr. Bill Gorham.
Thank you. Let's show our appreciation now for the team. And before we begin with feedback, I'd also like to thank all of the, not only all of the students who are here, but all the parents and family and friends who have come to support the team this morning. I know the students appreciate it, and we do as well. So we're going to begin with some feedback.
First of all, I thought the use of various examples built in your opening statement was really superb. You had clearly researched and identified both new and historic examples of strengths and weaknesses related to the question. That said, you used examples which a lot of people may not understand or have been familiar with. And I understand it was hard to do in a couple of minutes that you had, but using that many examples, I think I knew what most of them were, but there were a couple where I didn't have the background to really fully understand the nexus between what you were talking about from a policy perspective and what then the specific message you were trying to convey. So there's a balance there that I think needs to be struck.
I disagree with my. I thought the use of examples was quite good, and the thing that I like best about the use of examples in the opening is that you did do a very good job, not just in stating the example, but trying to tie it into your reasoning, and I thought that was really good. That having been said, maybe a little bit more disagreement, maybe you don't always disagree. Some of that is always interesting to the judges. Intelligent discussion of the issues. I thought that the presentation was poised really good job.
I thought you guys did an excellent job. I thought that I agree with my colleague, Judge Flores, that the examples that you gave were good. It showed a depth of research and knowledge and understanding of the issues that we're talking about, and help illustrate some of the abstract points that we're talking about. And I thought that was very good. I was also very impressed by your answers to the questions. Every question that we asked, you provided new and additional information. The only thing that I can suggest that you might have done is to have added a little bit more about the history of congressional committees over the years, but that's a minor point in what I thought was otherwise an excellent presentation. And it would have been difficult to include that given your time limit. So congratulations again on a very good job. Let's show our appreciation.